Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited to kick off a brand new series, a new webinar series. So if you're used to joining these webinars with us, you know that every single 3 months, we kick off a new topic and a new series. And today is the first one of the Collaborative Intelligence series. So really excited to have this conversation today with Hannah. We're going to be talking about enhancing value with design thinking frameworks. You're really going to enjoy this conversation. Hannah's an expert in this area, and she's going to walk you through some examples. So really excited for that. But before we get into the good stuff, I've got a couple of things I want to go over first. First and foremost, the agenda. Again, if you're used to attending these, we have cut these down to 45 minutes from an hour, just to give some people their lunch back if they're on our, a little bit of time on their lunch back if they are on our time zone. And you know, of course, if you've got questions, throw them in the Q&A or the chat throughout. We love when our audience engages with us throughout the conversation. So we will close at the end with some closing remarks. A little bit about this new series, Collaborative Intelligence. It is a free virtual series that covers practices, tools, and mindset that unleashes the team's ability to discover, create, and share insights and information. These happen every other Wednesday, so if you are interested in subsequent topics in this particular domain, please make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter so that you get notifications on when our next webinars are coming out. All of these are recorded, they're online and available on our platform, so you can access them there. And then a little bit about women in analytics. If you're new to this organization, our whole mission is to increase visibility to women making an impact in the analytics space and provide a platform for women to lead conversations around these topics. So like I said, we have a platform. I'll post a link to it if you're interested in joining. We have tons of events and lots of resources, and of course, the ability to connect with companies from a career perspective. So if you are having any issues with audio, I will be around to be able to help you with that, navigate that, make sure that you're all situated. Like I said, if you have questions, throw them in the Q&A and we will get to those throughout the conversation. And with that, I'm going to pass it to our sponsor for the series, Cogentity. I know if any of you have had any challenges or any issues collaborating, especially in the virtual environment, as an analyst or a data engineer with folks, this is definitely a really cool tool to check out. So I'm going to let Agna talk a little bit about the company and what they do, and then I'm going to post the link on here so it's easy for y'all to access.
Hi, everyone. I'm Agna Dominita, the Chief Product Officer at Cogentity, and we're very excited to partner with Women in Analytics to bring you this Collaborative Intelligence webinar series. So a little about us. Cogentity is a collaborative intelligence application where data engineers and analysts work together to write and reuse business logic. And we do that on today's modern on-prem and cloud data platforms. Cogentity removes the friction and waste in data and analytics management, freeing analysts to quickly generate insights to inform decisions and drive business value. We designed Cogentity with a clean interface to surface powerful functionality just when you need it. And our users love how easy it is to quickly insert business logic, share, and reuse curated SQL with just a few keystrokes. Please visit www.cogentity.co/WIA to learn more. While there, also download your free trial of Cogentity Pro, our SQL analysis tool designed to elevate your productivity. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, thanks to Cogentity for sponsoring this entire series. So let's get into the meat of the conversation. I'm going to pass things over to Hannah so that she can talk a little bit about herself, her background in the collaborative intelligence space, and then get right into her presentation and some of those examples. So Hannah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Reagan, and lovely to meet you and Women in Analytics. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm very excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is, in fact, collaborative intelligence. But first, let me tell you a little bit about me. I am the founder and CEO of a company called SALT Collaboratory. I even have collaboration in the name of my company because I think it's so important to all of us. Most of my background has actually been in management consulting, and I've worked with some of the large firms globally, Kearney, Capgemini, Ernst & Young, and more recently based out of Seattle with a company called Point B. And one of the things that I'm adding to this little introduction is the fact that I'm a certified design thinking instructor, which might look a little bit out of place with a management consultant, But I'll tell you that what I've found is learning and acquiring this particular skill set has really enhanced my ability to help clients from a collaborative perspective. So delighted to meet you. And in terms of the company itself, what we do is we help companies by either training them in collaborative intelligence practices, or we change our whole consulting orientation to make sure that they can collaborate better. And we infuse our design thinking tools and methods throughout that whole experience. And I'm just going to pause for a second to talk a little bit about some of the global companies we work with. One of them we'll be mentioning in a case study today, just to give you a flavor for the range of organizations and locations that we work with. So some of our clients are in healthcare. Some of you might recognize names like Delta Dental. Some are in finance like Santander. Some are in real estate like Heinz. Some are in consulting like this particular company, Spur Reply. And the reason why I'm highlighting that is because the need for the ability to collaborate effectively and be more innovative is universal. And so all of us, regardless of what our industry focus is or what specific type of work we're doing, need to learn how to get better at working more collaboratively together. And I want to start with the pain that we all have and the reason why we're here doing this series. And any of you, Reagan, Agla, any of you can sort of probably recognize this. We spoke about this before we even started our conversation about how hard collaboration is, particularly in our hybrid or remote settings that we find ourselves in. And studies, you're all data and analytics people, so there's lots of data in the conversation today. Studies have actually shown that professionals spend, and you can all, I'm sure, identify with this. Some of us spend 2 hours a week at least in pointless meetings. And when you do the math, that adds up to $541 billion in lost productivity. This is a study that came out of Doodle, who should know something about meetings. So when we share that number, we almost never get people saying, oh, that can't be true. Usually what we have is people sort of recognizing and seeing themselves in that number. Similarly, if you look at the number of hours we're losing to these meetings we don't really want to be in, that's 24 billion hours, and more than a third of us actually feel like these unnecessary meetings are the biggest cost to their organizations. So I just want to pause here and see whether you're all feeling like that's something that probably is quite accurate when you actually do the math. So the question then is, what are we going to do about this? Because we can't actually afford to have disconnected workforces and disconnected teams. We all know that when that happens, innovation grinds to a halt, that we feel trapped. Nobody's hearing our ideas. We're sitting in our silos. We aren't connected. But most of all, what people are finding is that all of us in our companies feel unheard and start to become disengaged. And that's the death trap for our organizations. If we're not contributing, if we're not feeling heard, if we're not feeling part of the experience, then we all start to retreat and pull back and not contribute our best work. So there's something definitely going on here that we need to work through. And that's where this whole notion of collaborative intelligence comes into the picture. And what you'll find is that collaborative intelligence is not a term that's owned by any specific, it's not a trademark term, right? If I had to ask you, what do you think collaborative intelligence means? You'd probably have a definition. It sort of makes sense, right? When we collaborate, we want to be more intelligent as a result of that collaboration. So there's going to be lots of definitions. Cogentity is going to talk about it in a particular way. We'll talk about it in a particular way. But for the purposes of our time together today, I wanted to share our definition of it. When we think about collaborative intelligence at SALT Collaboratory, we view it as a systematic approach that enables teams to unlock their collective genius. So let's just pause there for a minute and look at what we're trying to say there. We need some sort of construct. If we leave it to chance, we're not going to have the collaboration and the intelligence that we want from that experience. So when we think about the principles that we're going to be building upon here, we are coming into this conversation saying that people are greater together than apart. And when we look at the way some of these tools and methods that I'm going to share with you work, you'll definitely be able to see how that collective genius comes forward. We spoke just a minute ago about how we can't exist without connection, and Zoom helps, but not enough to really feel that we're working together on our challenges. But I think the most important one for us is this third one, that we can't actually leave it to chance. That setting up a meeting and hoping that goodness happens is no longer something that we can rely upon. So let's talk a little bit today about how we overcome that challenge of leaving it to chance. We feel that we need that systematic approach. And in our organization, we'll talk a bit more about this, we bring forward design thinking, which some of you might be familiar with, this notion of empathizing with the challenge, being clear on the definition on what it is we need to work through, ideating together, prototyping and testing results. So having a systematic approach is important. Design thinking isn't the only one. Some of you might work together really well doing objectives and key results. Some of you might really like lean or other ways of working, but we do feel that having something structured is going to be very helpful to create a beginning, middle, and end to the work that we do together. The next thing that we need is a collaboration space. So sometimes, and some of you might be in these situations, some folks are back at work, right? So they're able to bring out their sticky notes and their Sharpies, and they can do their work up on the wall. They can collaborate in a physical space. Most of us, though, are remote. And when we're remote, we have to start using tools and platforms that are out there that help us collaborate online. Today, I'm going to be doing all of our work in a tool called MURAL. There are others out there, but it's important to continue to explore, and I know that you guys do this all the time in your work, but be aware of the innovation that's happening in different platforms, just like Cogentity, honestly, to help us work collaboratively better. And then when we put these together, and that's what we're going to look at today, we end up getting that very, very elusive experience of collaborative intelligence. So I just want to pause there for a second, Reagan, see if you've had any questions come in, or if you have any questions before I continue.
One of my questions, and maybe you'll get to this with your example, is
Sure.
like why MURAL in terms of the tool, and like why isn't it enough to use like a Google Doc or Slack messages? Why is that type of collaboration more effective?
Well, let's come back to that actually, because I'm using MURAL right now to do a presentation. So it looks very much like PowerPoint. In a minute, though, I'm going to show you the full power of a tool like MURAL. And in full disclosure, I'm a partner of MURAL. I'm one of their Playmakers, which means that when MURAL, which is this digital collaboration platform, introduces its product to partners, it brings in people like my company to help them learn how to use it. It's a very sophisticated tool and sometimes takes a little while to learn. But when you understand the power of these collaboration tools, it really is a game changer for all of us when we're doing our work. Great. So when we have tools like MURAL, and we'll look at them in a minute there, it can just look like a digital whiteboard, honestly. And if you come into a room and all you see is the whiteboard and all you're going to do is write a few titles on it, you might get some value, but you probably need a slightly more sophisticated approach in order to really get the collaboration going. And so I want to pause for a minute and talk about how we view design thinking as the optimal approach in order to really get collaborative intelligence working across teams. So for those of you who are familiar with design thinking, this will look very familiar, you'll recognize all of this. For those of you who are new to it, let's just pause for a second and talk about what this construct is saying. So design thinking is a disciplined approach to creative problem solving in the service of people. It's basically the language of innovation. And why is that the case? Because innovators know that if they want to have a product that's successful, and I think some of you are actually in product management, you know that you can dream up whatever product you want, but if you don't solve your end user's problem, it doesn't matter. And so the most important thing that you can do when you're thinking about innovation is to really understand who you're designing a solution for. And you do that by empathizing with them, working with them, opening your mind and using the sort of diamond construct of saying, I have a hypothesis, but let me learn more about you. Let me understand what's going on and gather information. And then let me use some tools and methods to make sure that I'm zeroing in on what is in fact the real challenge. Sometimes we start this work thinking something is going on, and through our learning actually realize that the challenge is a little bit different. Once we know the challenge, then we collaborate again, because design thinking is a team sport. We collaborate again to come up with as many ideas as we can, so that once we have a long list of ideas and options that we can work through, we can select the ones that we think we want to prototype and test to get to our final solution point. And this final delivery phase through the prototyping and testing allows us to de-risk that outcome, so that when we get to the end of our story, we're most likely to hit the mark and to really take care of the challenges our users were having. So we really appreciate this approach, because especially from a consulting perspective, and all of you who are in data and analytics, we need structure to our work. If we're just coming in and starting in the middle, and we don't know whether we've done the pre-work and we don't know where we're going, it can be very difficult to be sure that we're going to get to the result that we're looking for. I will say though, and this is what we're going to see, in our presentation a little bit later, that while we can understand design thinking and more people know, oh, isn't that the empathy thing? And we're going to ideate together and then you prototype, that's design thinking, right? It's helpful to understand that that's how we need to work and not jump into a solution. But really, when it comes to collaborative intelligence, we really need to know and how to actually do the work. And that's where knowing different tools and methods is important. And that's where really knowing how to use these digital collaboration tools like MURAL comes into play. So I want to pause here for a second and just make sure that we all recognize that this collaboration challenge is a huge challenge, and actually being able to manage it and work through it is a deep skill. And as women, I have found that if we invest in learning these skills, we really can become that one person in the room who knows how to create that welcoming environment for collaboration, but then brings these technical skills to bear to make sure that we can actually get the teams from, well, it's nice to get together and chat, to actual outcomes. So what we're going to talk about a little bit more is how we use some of these tools and methods in actual examples. When we work this way, and this is the outcomes that we've seen from our many projects and training experiences, these are the outcomes that we actually see. And this is the crux of the work that we're trying to do. When we learn how to work this way, we do increase engagement across diverse sets of stakeholders. And if we're ever going to be solving anything really difficult, we need diverse opinions, and we need to integrate and pull in stakeholders from different parts of the business. So that engagement piece, which we're often missing, is the first one, the first nut that we crack. The next thing is tying back to that first slide that we saw about the problem with productivity in meetings, we really ramp up productivity by having people simultaneously participate in exercises, and we'll see that in a second. The third thing, and this is why it's the language of innovation, is we enhance creativity in our solution development. We'll look at that as well. We also get into a situation where alignment between participants is much stronger. You've all been in meetings, I'm sure, where you're sitting around the table or you're sitting around your Zoom call, somebody's speaking, people have tuned out, a decision is made, you weren't that supportive during the session anyway, and you come out of the meeting and you think, I can't believe so-and-so said that, I'm not going to do it. This way of working engages everybody so that at the end of the session, you don't have that alignment challenge because everybody was in on the work throughout. Those of you who are dealing with diversity challenges in your organizations, whether it's by stakeholder differences or whether it's differences in levels of the hierarchy, this is another way to neutralize that. But finally, and maybe the most important thing, honestly, for me, is the fact that we just work with greater optimism, because when we're connecting well together, that just elevates the whole experience. So these are the outcomes that we see time and time again from the work. But being data people, you don't need to take it from me. There are also studies that have come through from, I'm not sure where the study is right now, but I'll just speak to it for a second, from organizations like Forrester, who've looked at IBM. And when IBM brought design thinking into its workforce, they found that they got to results 2 times faster. So now what I want to do is talk a little bit about an actual case study that we did with one of our clients. And again, Reagan, before I jump into the case study, just want to check if there's any questions from the audience about anything I've covered so far.
I don't think questions have come in yet, but I did have a poll that I thought would be interesting to understand how many people are having current collaboration challenges today and if they've used design thinking in their work today. So I did just launch a poll. There's a couple of questions that the audience can answer. So if you just look, it should pop up on your screen. And if you've got a second to fill that out, wow, okay, that's great. Lots of yeses in terms of collaboration challenges. We're at like 86%, 88% of people who are responding. That's awesome. And then about 44% said yes on design thinking, 31 no, and then 28% I think so. So that's really interesting, actually. So it seems like a lot of people are struggling with collaboration, which is really great to hear in terms of us addressing that and some of the things that you're talking about. Exactly. Not great to hear that they're struggling, but hopefully you can help them with some of the examples you're going to go through. But I just wanted to launch that and see where folks were. So thank you, everybody, for filling that out.
Terrific. So yeah, so this is what we're seeing. More and more people are becoming familiar with design thinking, that's for sure. Although how to actually use it is still, like I mentioned, a little bit of a deep skill. So let's talk about this particular case study that I want to share with you, which was for a global real estate client. And this client has, $90 billion under management, 28 countries, 285 cities that they're operating in. And the chief HR officer was thinking about their future of work strategy, a topic at so many organizations right now. And even though people thought they may have cracked it for the end of the pandemic, apparently that's not really a thing, unfortunately. So thinking about future of work was top of mind for this organization. And the chief HR officer, like many of you, had heard of design thinking, had maybe been in a workshop or two, and really wanted to use it to try to get collaborative intelligence, literally, from her organization. She wanted her consulting partner, which in this case was us, to work with 6 different focus groups, 20 people per group, working from different geographies, working in different parts of the organization to get their input on what was most important to them and what solutions they may want to have. So how would you do something like that? So what we did is we thought about a 2-workshop structure, where in the first workshop, we wanted to work with our collaborators, and we'd have about, like I mentioned, 20 people in each of these sessions. And we wanted to understand what matters to you most and which existing solutions that people are putting out there may be of interest. And then in a separate session, we did a little bit of work offline in between. And I think you'll see this a lot when you're doing design thinking work, where you're working a lot with folks in meetings, but then also working asynchronously to prepare for the next session. And in that next session, that's where we wanted to create and see what ideas they had to address those challenges. Now, to do that, we needed to select tools and methods. And again, without going too much into this world of design thinking tools and methods, what I would like you to take away from this is that to get proficient at collaborative intelligence and using tools and methods, it takes time to learn new ways of working and to practice them. So in this particular case, we looked at our tool set. We used this from our partner, which is the LUMA Institute, in order to see which tools we want. And in the workshop, we picked out a few that we decided to use. And now I'm going to show you the miracle of MURAL, okay? I'm going to zoom out now to show you the full template that we created. And this is, in fact, a LUMA and MURAL template. If you go into MURAL, any of you who are users of MURAL, if you go into the template section and you do design thinking workshop, the SALT Collaboratory template is going to come up for you. because this is the template that we used across those groups. So we used the 6 different times with 20 people each time. So you can see that initially we brought them in and divided them into different groups. We used a combination of Zoom and MURAL. And once they were in the session, we had a 2-hour session where we covered the understand phase of the work. We did a little bit of offline consolidation that I'll share with you. And then we had another 2-hour session where they were able to actually create solutions. So I'm going to zip through some of these examples to show you how some of the tools and methods actually leverage the MURAL platform and really let people get into the work and collaborate together. Just so that you know, you were asking me, Reagan, a little bit about MURAL and why it makes a difference compared to Google Shared Docs or whatever. So what you're seeing me do, initially I was giving you a presentation using one of MURAL's features, which is the outline feature. And now I'm actually going in and showing you how this works in the tool itself. So let's take a look at the What's on Your Radar tool. I'm just going to close out of presentation mode for a minute. So this is a tool that we use when we want to understand what's on people's radars, which is another way of saying what's most important to you. So for this particular exercise, you've got to picture the scene, 20 people who come into the meeting. Most of them are not familiar with the tool, so we do give a little bit of time for them to get used to MURAL. And then we put them in breakout groups. And in each breakout group, we gave them a set of instructions. They were asked to, maybe 5 of them in a group, to come into the particular area that they were going to be working on and to select an aspect of the return to work or hybrid or future of work question that was important to them. So they came in, they met each other. One of them said, well, I'm really thinking a lot about work-life balance. And somebody else says, I think a lot about team connections. Somebody else says, I'm a technology person, I want to think about that. So when the initial tool was set up, the radar itself was empty, and each person had a bank of about 6 sticky notes next to their topic. And they were asked to think for themselves for a few minutes about what matters to them in that topic, just a list, not to prioritize, just a list. And so they would double click on their sticky note, they would write their particular topic, and they would get their own bank of about 6 sticky notes next to their topic. The next instruction was, now review what you've written and take the topic that is most important to you and move it to the center of the radar. So each person was asked to move 2 or 3 of their topics towards the middle and to put their other topics further out. And so what you can see is, in this particular case, here's another MURAL trick. You don't have to zoom in and out and get vertigo. Here we have some people saying they want to have free time, people wanting to have ways to work that are suitable to the project. In team connections, they wanted to cultivate and build team culture. So what we're able to do in the period of about 30 minutes, honestly, is let each person in the group think very deeply for themselves what's important in their own words. So we don't have somebody who's got to capture notes. They then move their topics into the center of the radar, and then each group can have a conversation about what matters to them and see how other people are thinking about the topic. So the whole question of, well, how do we stay engaged? How do we do genuine work? All of those challenges that you would have in a typical meeting of pushing back from the table and saying, so what do we think is important in work-life balance? Somebody doesn't talk at all, somebody's on their phone. When you're doing these types of exercises, everybody is engaged and everybody is contributing. So there's a lot of value, and what's happening in this particular Zoom room with this group was happening in parallel with 3 other groups. So you can think about productivity and all those lost hours, which make you just want to cry. Think about 4 groups working in parallel in the space of a half an hour to 45 minutes, each creating this radar. And then when we came together, we could just focus on the prioritized areas in the middle, and we'll look at how that happened. So that's one tool that helped with engagement and helped us see what's important to people. I'm going to show you another really cool tool, which is called BioFeature. And we actually designed this particular approach at SALT for this purpose. Imagine a scenario where you've got a really hard topic like, I don't know, return to work or hybrid work. Most people have no expertise in that. They're not reading the McKinsey studies. They don't know what the latest trends are. So if we're going to ask them to ideate, we want them to actually have some information about the topic. We could send them 5 reports to read. They probably won't read them. Or we could gamify it and use this particular tool called BioFeature. So what we did here is we created a store for each person in the meeting. We had 20 of these COVID-friendly stores where everybody could go shop without a mask. And what we did is we said, come into the store and browse the aisles. And you'll see that in each of these aisles, there are different options, like, for example, open meetings where people can come and listen, or a compressed work week, or the ability to work from home. And depending on the topic, each topic was given a certain dollar value, right? So working from home is quite difficult for companies. So that's probably $40. But if you just want people to get some transportation services, probably not that hard. And we asked people to browse the shelves to see which of these topics resonated with them the most, and then to move their money. They each got $100 per aisle to buy the features that were most important to them. If you think about projects that you're doing where there's some sort of trade-off between features and you need to ask your teams to think about these different features, you can either have a regular discussion or you can put the features in a BioFeature-like construct, price them based on difficulty, and have people actually think about the trade-offs that they want to make. So this was a very helpful exercise to get people to engage with this content, to learn, but also to show a preference. So if you picture the scene going back to that whole template, we had multiple groups doing this exercise in parallel, multiple people shopping together, which means that in between, the consultants could consolidate the outcome. We could look at the center of the radars from each of the different teams and say to them, you know, you brought up so many topics. We asked you to bring up a lot of topics, but in the interest of time, we need to focus on the ones in the center. Oh, and when we look at the ones in the center, look, they're themes. Let's look at the themes. You're talking about boundaries. You're talking about flexibility. You're talking about team bonding. So you can see that the different colors come from the different groups. We were actually able to find themes and to convert those themes into, those of you who know design thinking are going to recognize this, into how might we statements. If we're getting ready to ideate, we need to open the field and not just say to people, how would you deal with boundaries? That's not going to make you feel terribly creative. But if you say to them, how might we feel supported in establishing respected boundaries with our teams? Now I'm starting to think about things. Or on the team bonding, how might we help all team members feel connected to each other and their teams and businesses? When it comes to meetings, which is the death of all of us, how might we make team meetings something we all look forward to? So now we're starting to cross from what are the challenges they have into what are the types of innovations that they actually could start thinking about. And those of you who appreciate numbers can also see that we were able, from that BioFeature tool, to get a pretty good sense of what people are most interested in. That thing about ability to work from home, it's a thing. Most people want that. Leaders pay attention. So is flexible work hours. So are other aspects of the real estate or technology options that were provided. So just in that first 2-hour workshop, collaborators and leaders could get a really good sense of what's important to people and what they care about if they were offered options. Very quickly, I want to show you a few more things that we were able to do. We then called people back to that second workshop, and we looked for brainstorming or ideation tools that would work really well for these particular groups. And we landed on a tool called a creative matrix. If any of you have been asked to brainstorm, I bet you sort of get a little bit of a sinking feeling in your stomach, because it's actually really hard to do. If somebody gives you a blank sheet of paper and says, come up with ideas, you don't really know where to start. This tool, called a creative matrix, is really helpful to get people to feel like the ideation exercise is manageable. And we do it by selecting, say, 4 of those how might we statements we came up with. How might we optimize our work schedules to achieve our personal flexibility needs? How might we best represent the brand when we work with our clients? Different how might we challenges. And instead of just asking for ideas, we prompt those doing the exercise with what we call enablers: technology and digital media, policies and procedures, events and programs, so that when you're ideating at the intersection of a how might we question and an enabler. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to start coming up with things. Your brain is going to go somewhere that it wouldn't have gone before, because your specific zone of ideation is a lot more manageable. So usually we run this type of tool for a period of time, and we end up with more options than we could even come up with. Everybody sort of gets excited about their stuff. They start reading what other people do and see some really great ideas. So we ask them to use a rudimentary prioritization tool. There are many prioritization tools, but we didn't have a lot of time here. So we asked people to pull a few of their favorite ideas down and to use stars to indicate which ones they liked. And then finally, we asked them to develop these ideas into concepts. Now, talking about MURAL again and why it was so useful, we're doing 2 things. We're using design thinking tools like a concept poster and MURAL together. And we can say to people, you've got a half an hour, discuss your idea, build it out, and then divide and conquer, co-create, so that you're all contributing at the same time. And in that way, in about a half an hour, a small team can come up with an idea like this one, which is, well, let's have a situation where instead of everybody commuting in, we have offices closer to our homes. And the best part is seeing different people's creativity. So the people who illustrated this were imagining scenes where they're stuck in traffic, there's an accident, they can't get to their office. How much better would it be if they were able to work closer to home? The tool also helps us think about why it might fail and really get ready to start prototyping and testing. So what I'll tell you again is, when we look at all of the work that we did, what you're seeing is work that 20 people were able to do over a period of 4 hours with a little bit of work in between. And they went from not having any structure around this topic to really sharing what was important to them, learning from what was happening in the world of the space, the future of work, coming up with ideas, creating concepts. And when you look at how they experienced it, we used a final tool called Rose, Thorn, Bud to get feedback from them. And you'll see all sorts of things that are super important, like, I don't know, thank you for asking our opinion and not doing it to us. Things like a good facilitation tool, very user-friendly. Everyone had great ideas. Good diversion from the daily grind. Really nice working in small groups. So lots of positive feedback. Also noticing some things that were difficult. Where was senior leadership, for example? People always ask for more time. That's the nature of the beast when you're doing a sprint. But overall, people really enjoyed this very, very different way of working. So in conclusion, I just want to share again that when we at SALT Collaboratory think about collaborative intelligence, we take the labels away and we make sure that we have deep skills to be able to do this kind of work, this kind of work with our clients. We want to make sure that we can help them understand their challenges, be creative and ideate, and actually land on solutions that they can think about prototyping and testing. And if any of you want to know more about this, I've got a section here with some resources where you can email me if you're curious or find me on LinkedIn. Like I mentioned, we do have this design thinking workshop template in MURAL. Of course, we have a website and our partnerships with the LUMA Institute and MURAL. So Reagan, I do want to leave a little bit of time for questions and feedback, but I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Anna. We did get a question from the audience that says, When you talk collaboration, do you feel the impact of an individual who's an introvert or an extrovert impact the outcome of the results regarding collaboration? If so, how would you handle that type of environment?
That's such a great question. And it's one of the things that I appreciate the most about this way of working, because I've seen it so many times. So when you have the skills to work like this, everybody comes into the meeting on a level playing field. One of the things that's really hard in unstructured open meetings is some people talk a lot, some people don't talk at all. And so we don't always get to know what everybody is thinking. But when we have the tools and methods to say to everybody, as facilitator, I'm bringing you into this collaboration space, and I'm asking you all to do the same task, whether you're the senior vice president or the engineer or the person who really doesn't like to talk to people. I'm asking you a question, and you're going to capture your feedback on a sticky note in the tool or in person if that's how you're working. And the fact that we've leveled the playing field for everybody to contribute neutralizes that challenge of not hearing from the introverts or people who don't like to take the talking stick. And the richness of the solutions, when you pour through all of those sticky notes that ended up on the creative matrix, there's no author. We don't know who contributed. All we're doing is looking for the best idea. And I feel like for organizations or people who struggle with hearing from people, this is the golden ticket. Learning how to do this and bringing people in to collaborate in this way is what makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's incredible, because as you're going through this too, these are things that maybe might seem, oh, right, of course, like I wouldn't necessarily say obvious, because the approach I think is very specific, but the collaboration problem is so real, and especially in the analytics and data space, the points of collaboration is huge. You've got business stakeholders who don't necessarily understand all the nuances of the technical stuff you're doing. You've got technical folks who don't understand the business implications per se. And all of these people have to work together. They all have to collaborate. They have to gather requirements on what to build. And I can just see throughout this whole process of applying design thinking to generating metrics or dashboards or models is so critical. And then all these opportunities to get all of these people together to give feedback. Like, I just think that that's incredible, instead of just get on a call with me and tell me what you think.
Right. And I think the other thing that even as consultants, we're always inclined, we think that you're a good leader if you know the answer, right? You come into the meeting, you're supposed to know the answer, go to the answer. What design thinking teaches us is the answer is irrelevant if it's not what you need for the particular problem. And so this way of working creates the space for us to spend time understanding first and co-creating the solution. In many consultant scenarios, you arrive with the statement of work with the answer already in your statement of work. How can that possibly be if you don't understand the situation that your client is in? So this way of working gives us the permission to say, we're going to get there, but we're going to understand first. And because we know how to work productively, it's not going to take longer. It actually can be more. That's why you hear the word design thinking sprint. But what it means to people like us who want to you either bring it in yourself by learning how to do it, or you find people who know how to do it. But that ability to productively facilitate these interventions and these meetings is part of what's important. It's a new skill. Collaborative intelligence can be a buzzword, that's fine, but actually really achieving it is a skill that we need to acquire or bring in so that we can actually achieve those outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I was thinking about too during your presentation is that question on introvert, extrovert's really interesting, but also oftentimes for business stakeholders, when they don't understand something a ton, they don't want other people to know that they don't understand. So they'll say, I'm going to ask a stupid question, or I'm going to, or they just may not say anything. So this gives them that opportunity to be able to.
Right. And back to what I was saying earlier, as women, we're more inclined to create that safe space for people. And so if we can create that safe space, which we do naturally, but then follow up with the skill of bringing it home, we're untouchable, right? We can just do anything. So I'm a huge proponent for all of us, women in particular, learning how to do this so that we can bring it home. We can push back on people who are pushing us to places we don't want to go because we know how to get from A to B to the solution.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And I'm going to post, if anybody's interested, I'm going to post the link to our community channel as well. And I know, Hannah, you mentioned how people can connect with you, which is wonderful. We will be posting this video on YouTube as well. So if you do want to go back and listen back through it or reference something Hannah was saying, then feel free to do that. But thank you so much, Hannah, for spending time with us today. I appreciate all of your expertise in this particular area.
Pleasure. Lovely to meet you all.
Awesome. Everyone enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.